Welcome back guys to another awesome episode of the database management video series. So if you are new to this channel, my name is Dinul Perera and I am a software engineering undergraduate of Java Institute, and recently I started making these videos which introduces concepts about the software engineering field. So if you are someone who is interested in the software engineering field, you can go ahead and click on that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you will be notified by the latest content of this channel. And recently I started these videos about the database management system, so if you haven't watched them, you can go ahead and watch them if you like. So today we have the question number 24 of the database management video series. Let's go check it out. So this is question number 24 of the database management video series. If you have been in touch with us, this is the same extension of question number 16 that we discussed in video number 16. So if you haven't checked that, check that video, you can go ahead and check that video link. I have given that link in the description below. And also in this question number 24, I am not going to explain question number 16 again because I am from video number 16 to question number 24. I have broken this big question into smaller parts, so it's easy for you to refer. So I'll be walking through how I'm going to tackle these questions one by one. So let's move on to the question. So the first question says, first I'm going to get a marker and mark my path, but I am moving in the question. So in the first question they are asking, so in this question, I am supposed to answer these 4 questions using SQL queries, and I am going to execute these queries in the ADSQL software as usual. So I have the ADSQL software right here, so I am going to execute the queries in this software. So our database is the exam_marks_db database. I am just going to open it. Now we have the tables. And let's move on to the first question. Now our first question is telling us to write an SQL query to find out the details of the student who got the lowest mark in the subject of science. Now this is the subject science. Now this is the subject name, that's science, and it's in the first term. And they are also asking us the class also. So now I am going to use the concept of join queries. So there I am going to connect few tables. Now our first table is the student table. The second table is the marks table. That is the main table, and then the subject table, and then also the fourth table. That is the exam pair table. And in the student table that I am going to connect here, I am also going to connect the fifth table as the class table, because they are also asking at the class. So when you connect all these tables, you get some extra columns. So I'm just going to filter those columns to get the columns what I need. So that's the plan to answer this question. So let's move on how I'm going to do it. Okay. So the subject was science. So first I am going to get all the details of the marks of the students. Select all from exam_marks_db dot the marks table, semicolon. You enter SQL query using a semicolon, and once you run the query, you get all the marks of all the students who sat for both the first term and the second term. But here you don't get the name of the student, you only get the index number of the particular student. We don't know which student has this index number. If you want to find that out, you have to go to the student table and check that separately. In the student table, you have the ID of the specific student, but when you look at the exam mark table, you can't define which student has which mark in which exam term. Okay. So you don't know the values exactly because these are foreign keys, and because now if you want the student index number in the, now this is the exam mark table. If you want to know which student gained this mark 99, which student got that mark, you have to check for the index number, then you have to go for the student table to check which student that is. So that's why I am using join query, so you can easily refer which student has which mark, and also you need the subject and also the exam term, so you have to connect those two also. And last they ask in the class, so I am going to connect that one also. So I am going to connect the first table, that is the student table. When you are mentioning details about the table, you have to mention the database, the student table, and you have to mention the condition which you are connecting the two tables. My condition is the index number of the student underscore index number of the marks table should be equal to index number of the student table. So once I execute the query, it gives us you have to mention inner join. So I use that part. Now once you run the query, you get all the details of the students who got that exam number. So now you don't have to look at the index number, you can straight away look at the name of the student who got the mark, but that's not enough, you need some filtrations also. So here I am going to connect the class table, exam underscore marks underscore db dot the class table on the condition the class ID of the student table should be equal to the class ID of the class table. So when you are connecting two tables, they are connected by two rows, and that connection you must apply a condition to that connection, otherwise it won't work. So now I also have the class table. Here the class table of the specific student. Now the class of Sajitra is 11A, the class of Amila is 11B. Likewise, you get details of the class also. Next, I am going to join the subject table and the exam table. The subject table. Sorry, write it like this: subject table on the condition student underscore marks underscore db, the subject underscore id of the subject marks table should be equal to the subject id of the subject table. Now when I run the query, you get the details of the subjects also. I have the subject columns also. The mark which the student got for this subject. Okay. Next, I am going to join the exam term table. Inner join exam underscore marks underscore db dot the exam term table on the condition the student underscore marks underscore db dot the exam underscore term underscore the exam underscore term underscore term underscore ID column should be equal to the term ID of the exam term table. Okay. Now I want the query. Now you also have the details of the exam held on the specific date. Now this the mark here. Now when you take one row, I'll just explain one row. Now this student Dylan has this index number and has this mark for the subject of mathematics, which was held on second term, which was held on this date, and he is in class 11A. That's how you read the table once you connect it. Now what I have to do is I have to give the conditions. Now you have all the subjects, you have details of the all the subjects, but I only need the subject of science. So where the subject underscore name is science. Now you only have the details of the science subject. In the subject name column we have only science. And also I need for the term name should to be second term. Now when I run the query, you get all the details of the students who sat for science on the second term. Now last what I have to do is I have to mention the columns that I need specifically. So I need the index number of the student, the first name. So the columns that you require should be logical. That means it can't be like you won't need the IDs of the students. You only need the values. So your columns that you are selecting should be logical, and you need the subject name. You need the subject name and the term name and the mark. So now we have only these values of the student, and I will also include the subject class name also, because at the last of the question they are asking the class name of the student also. So I will just mention it here. Now we have also the class of the student that you require. Now they are asking, now we got all the details, now they are asking us who got out of these students who got the lowest mark. Okay. Now what I have to do is, I just have to open another query tab and copy this whole query and paste it here. Now once you run this, you get the same details as earlier. Now except for these columns, I only take the mark. Now we have only the mark. Out of these, what is the lowest one? The lowest one is 45.52. So I just use the minimum function. Once you use this minimum function, you get the lowest value out of this, that is 45.52. Then what I am going to do is, I am going to write another condition, and mark of the student should be, now here I am going to use the concept of subquery. Now you have the mark, you get the mark of the you get the lowest mark for the subject of science for the second term. Now when you execute this query, you get that mark. So I am going to copy that query and paste it here as a subquery. So the mark should be the lowest mark now. Now when I run the query, you get all the details of the student who got the lowest mark for the subject of science for the second term. You get also his class. Okay. So that's the end of the first question. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one says, arrange the marks obtained by all students for the second term held on this date in the ascending order. Okay. Now I am going to open another query tab. Then I am going to select all from exam underscore marks underscore db dot the exam term table. Now this is the marks table. So once you run this query, you get all the details of the marks. Then what I am going to do is, I am going to here in this case I will just use the concept of subqueries. So I am going to give a condition where, so I only read the marks. So next what I have to do is here I have to mention. So I think if I use inner joins, that would be much easier than this. So, and you will be able to understand it very well. So I am going to connect the student table exam underscore marks underscore db dot the student table on the condition student underscore marks underscore db, the index number of that table should be equal to the index number of the student table. Now we have both the student table and the marks table using this query. Okay. Next I am going to inner join the class table exam underscore marks underscore db dot class, and the condition is the class ID of the student table. So when you are mentioning name of columns, you must introduce them inside wave essence. Should be equal to class ID of the class table. Now we have the class of the specific student also. Now what I have to do is, I'll just share this thing like this. This is the condition that I gave. The class ID of the student table should be equal to the class ID of the class table, and now I have to inner join the subject table. The subject table on the condition student underscore marks underscore db dot the subject ID should be equal to subject ID of the subject name. Now once I run the query, you have the details of the subject also. Now I have to connect the exam timetable, exam underscore marks underscore db, the exam timetable, and the condition is student underscore marks underscore db, the exam term ID of the marks table should be equal to the term ID of the exam term table. Now we have the details of the exam term as well. Now I have to give some conditions because I only need the details of the science subject only. So the subject name is science. Now we have only the details of the subject of science in the subject name, and the exam date is, in the question the date was 2020, the date was 2020 3rd 15, 2020 3rd 15. Now once I run the query, now we have the marks obtained for the subject of science held on this date. The exam date is the date that we gave as the condition. And now we have all the details. Now I am going to filter the details that we need only. So I don't need all of the details. I will need the index number, the first name, the last name, and the class name, the subject name, and the exam date. Yeah, that's all I need. And also I'll just mention the term name also, so it will be more meaningful. Now when I run the query, it should be an underscore. Now when I run the query, you get all the details of the index number. You get all the details as the index number, first name, last name, class name, subject name, term name, and I'll also mention the mark also. Now we have the mark also. Now we have the mark right here. I'll just mention that last. Okay, now I have the mark table as the last. Now what I have to do is I have to arrange these data according to the ascending order of the mark. That's according to the question. So order by, now I have to mention which column that I am going to order, that is the mark table. I am going to place them in the ascending order according to the mark. So mark, and I am using ascending order. If you want the descending order, you can use this function. If you want the ascending order, as you can see, this is the descending order. If you want the ascending order, you can use ASC. So now we have all the details of the students who sat for the science subject for the first term, that was on this date. The date was given to us, and now we have the mark of the student. Now this data is represented in the ascending order. Okay. Now our next question, that is the second question. Next they are asking, find information of all students who obtain marks between 40 and 80 in the subject of mathematics subject for the exam held on this date. Okay. Now they have given us a range of marks. We have to filter all the details up to the students who have scored between 40 and 80 for the subject of mathematics held on this date. So if this was the first term, this should be the second term, but that's not important. We just have to introduce this value as the exam date. And next, I just open another query tab to start the question. So first I'll select all the details from the marks table. Then I will join the student table. The student index number of the marks table should be equal to the index number of the student table. Now you have the details of the students. Also joining the subject table. So we are first join the class table. Class table on the condition, the class ID of the student table should be equal to the class ID of the class table. Okay. Now we have the class table introduced to the main table as well. Next, on to the subject table. On the condition, the subject ID of this marks table should be equal to the subject ID of the subject table. Now we have the subject table connected as well. Then I am going to inner join the exam term table on the condition student underscore marks underscore report table, the exam term ID of that table should be equal to the term ID of the exam term table. The term ID of the exam table. Now you also have the exam table connected to it, which has the term name and the exam date. Okay. Now what we have to do is we have to select the details only for the subject of mathematics. So where subject name should be mathematics. So when you are mentioning these columns and when you are writing this query, be careful about these spaces. Sometimes now if you introduce as this, sometimes the query may go wrong. See, you have no details with the subject of space mathematics, but you have details with the subject of mathematics. So be careful about the spaces also. Now you have all the details of the first term and second term, but for the subject of mathematics. Now we have to give the exam date. And the exam date should be according to the question 2020, 07 and 10. According to this, okay, now I have all the details for the subject of mathematics for the second term, which was on this date. We were given what is the date, we weren't given the term date. Next, what you have to do is, you have to go into the question. Let's see the question again. So I'll just get the details of what I need, because I don't need all of these details. First I need the index number, the first name, the last name, and the last name, the subject name, the term name, and the exam date, and finally the mark. Okay, this should be exam underscore date. Now I have all the details including the index number, first name, last name, class name, subject name, term name, exam date, and marks of the student. And now I have to filter all the details for the students who have scored between, and you can use the keyword called between, says 40 and 80. Now when I run the query, okay, now here I have to mention this, and it should be marked. The mark should be between 40 and 80. Now we have all the details of the students who got marks between 40 and 80 only. From those details we also filtered out the details of the students who got the marks between 40 and 80. Okay. So that was the end of the third question, and last they are giving us more question also. They are asking us to arrange those details in the descending order. So I can just quickly do that. So they are asking us to, we don't have to write a query again, they are asking us to arrange the above result in the descending order. So you just have to, like in the previous question, that means question number 2, we have to use order by the mark, and this should be descending this time. Okay. Now we have all the marks arranged in the descending order. We got all the marks of the students who obtained with marks between 40 and 80 for the subject of mathematics held on this day, and we arrange them in the descending order. Okay. So that's the end of the 24th question of the database management video series, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. That means in the question number 25. See you guys then. Have a great week. Bye guys.